Welcome. I'm Dr. Joshua Einhorn Castillo, Grants Officer, College of Education, California State University, Northridge. My bio, I've worked at Northridge for 20 years as a grants officer. I'm very involved with the Grant Professional Association, grantprofessionals.org. I really recommend all of you just, capture that link. It's a wonderful organization. I'm very involved. For 2 years, I was president of the Southern California Grant Professional Association chapter. And for the last 4 years, I'm associate editor of the National Peer Reviewed Journal of the Grant Professional Association. Very involved. It's a wonderful organization, and they have conferences and there's local chapters, and they have all these journals which have great, really tangible, concrete advice, not theoretical. Like I'm the strategy paper editor. It's what are the strategies to get a funded grant? And it's real like nitty gritty. This is what you got to do. And so it's a great resource. But today, I'm your resource. I have also taught grant writing to master's and doctoral students at CSUN for the past 7 years. First thing, this is a real macro to tell you about the funding landscape. In terms of the funding landscape, about 1% of grant funds dispersed each year, this is in the US, are from private foundations like the Ford Foundation. 1% are from corporate foundations like Walmart Foundation. 28% come from individuals, in other words, in the form of bequest or wills, or someone just writes a check and makes a donation. And 67% from federal grants. If I were looking at this and I were a newbie, I'd say, wait, why aren't we all applying to federal grants? Well, you can, you're eligible each one has its eligibility, but small not-for-profits are eligible. That having been said, if the federal government, and when I say that, it would be in this case, something like the Department of Education, the National Science Foundation, National Endowment for the Humanities, you can definitely apply. It's very time consuming. And those applications can be very lengthy. And then also, of course, it's very competitive. One thing you can do if you're a smallish not-for-profit is partner with, for instance, CSUN. I'm not here to advertise CSUN. It's great. If you do partner with CSUN, it does add a lot of clout. For instance, if you partner with the College of Education, then you get my grant writing services. But like I said, the point of this is totally not to tout CSUN or my services or anything. It is for you to learn about grant writing. The tone of your request. If you're a small or a large not-for-profit, you are key to the funder. In other words, without your hard work and your great idea, there's no project. And without their funding, there's no project. But it's symbiotic. So when you talk to a program officer or a director, you are a collaborator, not a person begging for their money. It's a symbiotic relationship. The tone of your request is polite, but not servile. So you don't have to humbly request, and you don't have to say it's through your amazing beneficence. You can just talk to people like you would just normal colleague. If you're writing a $500 grant or a $5 million grant, it's all the same components. There's a summary, introduction, the problem statement, otherwise known as the need statement, objectives and goals, methods. These are also called activities or project design. That includes key personnel, management plan and timeline, evaluation, sustainability. After the grant ends, what's going to happen? Is everything going to disappear? Dissemination. Are you going to share this with other not-for-profits? Maybe write a journal article, maybe present at a conference. So they all have the same elements, but if it's a $500 grant, let's say donors choose, that's like local school teachers can get literally like $500 for their classroom for art supplies or maybe a robotics kit or something like that. Yes, it's all going to be the same components, but a donors choose application for 500, I could knock out in 30 minutes. And the introduction might be one sentence. The need statement might be 3 sentences. The objectives and goals might be 2 sentences. The methods might be 2 paragraphs. The evaluation might be, I will review at the end to see how we use the robotics kit or how we use the arts and crafts. Now I'm talking about the small donors choose. And then, of course, the budget, whatever it is. If it's arts and crafts, then I need 10 paintbrushes. Each paintbrush is $5. I need 2 cans of paint. Each can of paint is $25. So that adds up to $500. So that's the budget narrative. So all of these have the same components. If you're doing a federal grant, all the same components. However, all these things might be like 50 pages, where the need statement might be 3 to 5 pages, double spaced. And the evaluation, rather than saying, oh, I'll evaluate it, that's fine if it's 500. If I'm the Department of Education, I'm giving you 3 million, I can say with certitude they want an outside evaluator. So that's wonderful. It takes onus off of you, but then you have to look at your budget. That can cost 5 to 10% of your budget. So let's make it up. If it's 3 million, all of a sudden you might be paying 300,000 just for the evaluator. But the great news is then it's very rigorous evaluation and it's worth it. I know a lot of you are sort of, everything's relative, so I'll say smallish. So some of these things may apply to you, some of them might not. So I'm going to really just, as I speak, talk about the whole spectrum. So the need is not what you want. In other words, yes, you need travel funds, you need time off, you need a research assistant. You're trying to sell them on the idea, the needs of the community, gaps in research, knowledge in the field, like the ferry hunt. The arts budget has been decimated in LAUSD. So for students to get arts education, small not-for-profits are taking up the slack. And the other thing is, especially in the needs assessment, you really don't want to have an uncited assertion. So that means if you even make a statement that I think everyone would agree, there's insufficient funds in arts education in LAUS. While that may be a truism, it'd be a lot better is if you cited it. So it could be as simple as LA Times, January 31st, 2025. See what I'm saying? So it's just kind of like, it's not just your opinion. And then that goes for whatever it is. Let me see what other people are doing. Musicians at Play Foundation, Burbank Cultural Arts. So the same thing, Cindy. If you're talking about this is arts education too. There's a dearth of arts education. You just want to do a source. I'm sure there's been a lot literature and articles written about this topic. You want to emphasize solutions, not deficits, strength-based. Avoid the target population sounding victimized or passive. Describe them as, a lot of this is education and faculty and student related. So you might just have to extrapolate it to your thing, but describe them as students you're working with who are capable of change and growth. The goal is not what we will do, it's what the students will accomplish. Your organization is the means, not the end. A goal is to move the target population from where they are to where they want to be. So if they don't know how to play a musical instrument, they're not exposed to arts education, you're going to offer this exposure. They're going to go from unexposed to exposed, from illiterate in arts education to literate, to not expressing creativity to expressing creativity. And then you can add all sorts of elements. I work with Strength United, a local group. They do a lot of arts education for people who've been the victims of violence. So now we're adding another layer, how efficacious it is for trauma-informed art therapy when people can express themselves. Now we've had these horrible fires. Maybe you're going to have music or expression where people can talk. They've lost their home. My friend teaches at Pacific Palisades High School. They're now back online. All of their socialization has ended. So if you're adding two different things, arts education, and then I'm making it up, trauma-informed pedagogy. So you'll have to do a needs statement for each. And it doesn't have to be overkill. Each one might be a sentence or one paragraph. Depends on how much time and space you have. But each one of those would be an assertion. Arts education is efficacious. If people have experienced a trauma, art can help overcome the trauma. Those are two assertions, and I'm sure they're true, but each one needs its own citation. Goals and objectives. So the first thing I want to say is have it be realistic. Someone's giving you $10,000 or even $100,000. You really have to be specific, and you've heard SMART goals. So let's look, I have it here in these notes. Goals are broad. For instance, to improve student academic success, Objectives are a lot more specific in regard to time, number, and barometer of success. This is the SMART goal. Within 12 months, 59% of the 175 students receiving the intervention will score proficient on the math section of the California Standards Test. So we want to improve math scores. That's the overarching goal. But with $100,000 or $10,000, we can do an intervention for 175 students within a 12-month period. And of those students, 59% are going to improve. In other words, it'd be unrealistic if you said 100% will, because that's just not the way things work. Projections for objectives should be realistic and relevant. Too high, the funder will think you're not in touch with the issue at hand. Too low makes you not competitive against the other applicants. If I'm going to give you $3 million and I say, I'm totally making it up, the current algebra fail rate in LAUSD is 50%, which I think it is. And then if I said, if you give me $3 million, I'm going to have it be 49%. In other words, it's only going to be a 1% change. I'm kind of like, that's even not even within the margin of error. So it definitely has to be realistic. In other words, you have to do an educated guess, but you have to think, is this competitive? And one of the things I always do is I'm like a mock reviewer, sometimes an official reviewer for things, but you can be your own mock reviewer. You can say, if I were reading this, is this compelling? The other thing you can do is you can share it with a colleague, have them read it and say, pretend you're a reviewer. Is this compelling? You know, since reviewers come from all stripes, there's no right or wrong as to who you ask to read it. You will not be able to solve world hunger or vanquish illiteracy. However, you will be able to improve X amount of clients by Y% in Z timeframe. The methods, which activities are you choosing to implement to overcome the barriers to change? So the way you can draft these is you can either do a literature review, in other words, go into, the library and look, let's say you're doing arts education, you're doing plays in the forest. You can see, okay, maybe someone's published articles about this. And it says the best way to do it is over a 4-week period, or maybe a high intense thing during the summer where they can come 3 weeks, but 5 hours a day. And then you can say, I based it on, and then if it's a published article, it gives credibility. The other thing is, you're your own expert. So if I'm the Burbank Musician Society and I've done a project, for the past 20 years, you could say, we've honed this program. We found it to be highly efficacious. Here are some testimonials of students who have gone through the program. We're wanting to fund it for next year. So in other words, you have credibility too. The flip side is maybe you've never offered something. Well, then you can call something a pilot, but then you can go to the literature and find things that are relevant and say, I'm going to base it on this, and just do a simple citation and move on. So you want to talk about the space, the equipment, the supplies, the staff, and why you need these people, this space, this equipment, these consultants, So when you talk about the key personnel, that's the time where you really want to brag. I know, I'm all for humility. I'm a yoga practitioner and teacher, and we always talk about humility. But this is one thing where you really want to tout your educational credentials, your experience. So it's not only about education. I might have a PhD in arts education, which is great. But if I'm a reviewer, if I had someone who has been doing arts programs or music programs or theatrical programs for 20 years, and they only have a college degree or a high school degree, I'm more impressed with the person who, has done the work. And of course, it can be a combination of the two. And the budget, it's really important that you ask for what you need. So if you can ask for up to 3 million, or you can ask for, like we had mentioned, 10,000. If you do the budget and you only need 9,500, just ask for 9,500. Don't pad it, in other words, Just ask for what you need. And the other thing is the cost per client served. I'm really into this. If I'm a reviewer, now don't always think, oh, the cheaper the better, and the cheaper, the more likely I'm going to get funded. Totally not true. If you've sold me with the need, and I'll give you concrete examples. When Obama was here and they had the stimulus package, CSUN applied and got $9 million. And we were able, for the Department of Education, and we were able to really do a compelling case that there were insufficient number of special education teachers in LAUSD. And just the whole pipeline was, people weren't interested in it. A lot of people, it's high stress, it's low pay. And so to get people to get credentialed, we said, we're going to offer them full cost of the credential program. So it's about a year, year and a half. And so cost per client there was $36,000. Tuition cost was about 8 to 10. We gave them a living expense of about, I can't remember, it's a long time ago. Let's say $1,500 per month. That cost per client made sense because at the end we said we and LAUSD promised the people jobs. So it's very compelling. We were able to say at the end of the term of the grant, LAUSD will literally have 150 new special education teachers who get an excellent training at CSUN. That's an example that it's not just about the cheapest part per client. But if I'm going to do something smaller, I'm making it up. I'm asking the Dell Foundation for $25,000 for robotics kits. I'm totally making up these numbers, and it's going to cover 5 schools. Each school has 3 robotics clubs. Each club has 5 students. So let's just say it's 100 students. And then let's just say it was $20,000. So $200 per student served. And what they get out of it is they have an after-school robotics club for about 3 to 4 months, culminating in a robotics competition at CSUN, which is a lot of fun. $200 per student seems really reasonable. Like the students are really, it might turn them on to STEM, and we really do outreach for girls, and this is, elementary. So girls and students of color and underserved communities. So you can add all these compelling things, and it's only $200 for each student who is in the robotics club. So if I'm a reviewer, hey, that's really efficacious. I'm really making a big bang for the buck. And then indirect costs, basically there's administrative costs and there's a lot of variables. Sometimes they say we won't pay any administrative costs, then you have to accept that. But they can vary from 5 to 48%, especially if you're partnering with CSUN. That's a whole large topic, but these are federally negotiated rate. And it has to do with, if you're using, as an example, labs at CSUN are very expensive. And so that's why it goes way up. But a lot of them in your realm would be around 5%. So what that means is if you apply to a grant for 100,000 and they say we can accept 5% to go to indirect, that means that, let's say your organization gets the 100,000, you'll have 95,000 for the project and then 5,000 for administrative costs. So that'll include, you have your office, you have your computer, and then if they give you $100,000 grant, generally you have to open up a bank account. And then if you're going to buy robotics kits, then you have to write checks for the robotics kits. And then if you're going to pay the director $1,000, well, you have to write that check. And then you're going to have audits. And then the funder is going to ask for a report. So you can see how there really are actual administrative costs. So it's very rare for a funder or foundation to say 0 because it literally costs to do a grant. This one's real tricky. The percent of proposals that are funded, it totally varies, of course. I'll just throw out some numbers, like 1% of federal submissions overall, but don't start panicking. The way I tell people is you're only competing against yourself. In other words, you can only give your best effort. And even at the 1% level, we've had a lot of success. CSUN gets around $17 million in grants per year. Each competition, each funder is going to have different percentages. Sometimes it's as high as 50%. What percentage of grants you get funded? I'd be curious. Is it 20%? Is it 40%? Is it 60%? Even if it's 20% or 40%, that's actually quite a good ratio. And part of applying for grants is not getting funded. If you're learning how to play chess and you lose a game, if I challenge you, okay, I learned the rules. Now I challenge Alejandra to a game, and the first game I lose. Do I say, that's it? I'm never playing chess again. You really have to be realistic. But it does take perseverance and it is disheartening. So I don't want to, especially if you spend a lot of time on a project, but it's not all wasted. If you apply and you're not funded, you can, if they give you notes, tailor it and resubmit, or you can apply elsewhere, or it's a learning enterprise for you, or maybe you just say, I'm going to do the idea without external funding. So, or maybe I'll do a smaller version of it. So really try to have a positive perspective. Everyone loves collaboration. So it's not only with CSUN, with anyone, the Tree People, Los Angeles County Office of Education, Valley Not-for-Profit Services. People like collaborations because inherently you're already disseminating because you're working with multiple entities.